my favourite time of the day, which is bedtime. Fucking love sleeping. I don't, however, sleep naked. Give me a word if you do sleep naked. And if you don't? The main reason I don't sleep naked is we've got a cat who's an arsehole. And if your toes are popping out the end of the duvet, he will nibble on them. Imagine what he'd do to me, Fanny. I'm not risking it. Not risking it. But a while ago, a friend of mine rang me one day laughing. She was heavily pregnant at the time. She rang me to tell me the hospital had been on the phone, and they said that when she came in to give birth, she was to bring a nightie, and she thought this was piss funny. She said, who even wears nighties these days? And I didn't say anything, but I wanted to say, me. And then she said, where would you even get a nightie from these days? And that's when I snapped and said, Marks and Spencer's, you fucking idiot. They told her to bring a button-down nightie, which makes sense for breastfeeding reasons, but I think that's just good advice for all of us, isn't it? If your partner can rummage in the top and then rummage underneath, you don't have to take the fucker off at all. There are some health benefits to sleeping naked, let me tell you. There's 3 of them. Let me talk you through them. Number 1, keeps your temperature down, and I thought, well, so does sticking a leg out. Number 2, improves self-esteem. That sounds like a load of shit, doesn't it? I don't think it would improve my self-esteem if my husband rolled over to see me lying there with a chin full of tits. At least in a nightie they're contained, aren't they? Instead it looks like a carrier bag full of bread buns. And number 3, keeps testicles cool. It's mostly for the men, that one, obviously. Now, I've met some testicles in my time. Nice to meet you. I've never met a cool one. They've all got a degree of sort of tackiness, haven't they? We were in bed the other day and he got quite animated. And he shouted out, feel how hard that is. And I thought, you bugger, it's Tuesday, we didn't have this booked in. Turns out he's talking about the skin on his feet. I thought about taking him to one of those places, you know those places that are popping up all over the place where it's got a tank with the fish in and you put your feet in and the fish nibble at the hard skin, you know those places. And I thought about taking him to one of those and I thought, I can't do that. The poor little fish, they'll think he's got fucking shoes on. I'm just going to take him to a blacksmith instead. The third thing I decided to do, I decided to learn to cook. I've lived off ready meals and toast for far too long, and I thought I've got a nice kitchen now, maybe I should learn to cook. And I'm learning, it's going quite well. I don't always know the right words for things. I couldn't remember the word marinate recently when I was trying to describe a recipe to my friend that I'd had a go of. I said, look, then you get the chicken, it's dead straightforward. Get the chicken, you put some olive oil on it. Then you get some lemon thyme, you put that in with it, and you cover it and leave it in the fridge overnight to fester. But I've always had a belly, even though I was much, much slimmer, I've always had a belly. I always get offended when people think that this is pregnant, like I would ever let a pregnancy get this far. No! But I did a thing the January before last that I think a lot of people do, especially in January. I downloaded a diet app. Now, the phone I was using at the time was a thumb recognition phone. It didn't immediately recognise my thumb, it just kept juddering. And first of all, I thought my phone was just really clever, and it was like, it's a diet app, we've clearly been stolen. And then I looked at my thumb, and it was just covered in biscuit. So I licked the biscuit off, so I thought, might be my last biscuit in a while, and I downloaded the diet app. What came with the diet app was a WhatsApp group of other participants. It was open to all, but my group happened to be all women. And it was so we could support each other and help each other. Everybody knows diets are hard and a bit shit. Also in the WhatsApp group was a nutritionist who was no fun at all, it transpired. One of the women in the group asked a question of the rest of us, a perfectly reasonable question, especially on day 1 of a new diet. She said, I'm having trouble with my sweet craving. Can anybody recommend something that isn't bad for me but will help? And one of the other women responded almost immediately. And she said, I usually find a mug of hot water with 1 small drop of lemon works for me. And I just thought, I'm not going to make it to the end of the week. My suggestion was going to be half a Twix. And the nutritionist, she was called Poppy. Of course she fucking was. She said, can I just chip in? And I misread it. And I was like, chips, hooray, nom, nom, nom. She said, just brush your teeth, that fixes everything. And I thought, that's so unhelpful. The only thing that would help is hunger, if I could eat me fucking toothbrush, because I'm so hungry right now. You daft cow. Cows. There were some recipes that came with the diet. I tried one of them. It was how to make banana pancakes out of almost no ingredients. First time I tried them, just looked like vomit in a pan. Second time, managed to make them look a lot more like pancakes. And I was so excited and a little bit lightheaded from all of the hunger that when I ran from the kitchen to show my husband, I tripped and the plate smashed on the floor. But because it was a really low point in the diet for me, let's call it day 2, I ate them off the floor. Then I had to check to see if the fragments of plate and cat hair I'd also ingested counted as my sins for the week. One of the women in the group got told off as an adult, got told off for eating goji berries. If you've never had goji berries, it's like chewing elastic bands. She got told off because goji berries are full of natural sugar, not really allowed on this plan. She wasn't having Coke or Pops with cider poured on. She was having goji berries on her bran flakes, some sad sprinkled on some more fucking sad. I got told I called it a diet. What I actually said was, I fucking hate this diet. We don't like to call it a diet. We prefer to call it a way of life. So I said, I fucking hate this way of life. She was right, though, because it was also my way of life from the 3rd to the 5th of January. I started to ask questions. You got a nutritionist at your fingertips. Why don't you try and learn something? I said, I've got some questions for you, Poppy. Is that okay? She said, fire away, anything you like. I said, I've had a cherry. Now, I thought it was okay because it's fruit, but now I'm not so sure. It was on top of a bakewell. Is that okay? I've had an apple. An apple's full of natural sugar as well. It was surrounded by something called, what was it called? Crumble. Is that all right? I've had a banana. A banana's allowed. I mean, I ate it out of a stripper's crotch. Is that all right? She said that was fine. The next day, it was covered in cream. I think it was cream. I couldn't be sure. It was dark. But the final straw for me, my last day on the diet, or day 3, was when Poppy came on the WhatsApp group and she said, hey, girls. Which always pissed me off, because all women in their 40s and 50s, fuck off with your girls. Hey, girls, can I just check if you all definitely challenged yourselves this week? And I was the first to respond. I said, I've challenged myself, Poppy. She said, oh, good, please share it with the group. I said, gladly. I said, I challenged myself. I said, I walked into Asda. I went to the whoops section. I found 2 Belgian buns that had to be eaten by midnight, and I fucking did it! I was going to say, and I'd do it again, but I have several times over since then. Like, hair removal is a whole subject all on its own, isn't it? There's so many different ways, especially as women, that we can remove our hair. You can wax, you can shave, you can pluck, you can epilate. My sister had laser treatment, which is supposed to be permanent. She had it to her underarms. It was quite painful and quite expensive. And after 2 months, the whole lot just grew back in. Which is terrible, but does go some way to explaining why James Bond was always so nonchalant when a laser was aimed at his cock and balls. Come back in a couple of months, man, I'll be champion. Realised I've made James Bond a Geordie. Maybe that's the future. Few cheers for a James Bond that's Geordie, how nice. But according to women's magazines, there are only 2 options for hair down there for women. One of my friends said to me recently, she said, you know why women are supposed to have hair down there, don't you? And I said, is it like your nose, so you don't get muck up it? And she said, no. She said, women are supposed to have hair down there so that nature knows where your reproductive bits are. I said, why does nature need to know? Surely as long as me fella's got a rough idea. Why do all the deers and the rabbits need to know? Well, maybe the rabbits. Are you an eager beaver or a late bloomer? If you're a late bloomer like me, then my new show is just for you. Late Bloomer is available now to stream and download from my website, sarahmillican.co.uk.